The Tag on the Key. Book 1, The Plan. Chapter 35, The Rebbe. I went to a convention of university students in Brooklyn and had a chance to see the Rebbe up close. He was Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It was true. He was an extraordinary human being. I was in the shul where the Rebbe was praying, and the place was absolutely packed to the point where it was not possible to move. When the prayers were over, the Rebbe turned to leave the hall and returned to his office upstairs. The packed crowd instantly split down the middle, leaving the Rebbe a wide path. Shortly after that experience, I told my father that I had been to Brooklyn and that I had actually seen the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He asked me if I saw the crowd splitting when the Rebbe passed, and I told him that yes, indeed, I most certainly did. He looked at me with a look that I had never seen on his face before. It was a look that simply transcended time and place. He was not here, now in this time. And he was not here in Connecticut, where we were actually physically standing. But he was elsewhere. He just smiled a big smile and said, "Isn't that something?" Chapter 36, Advice. I was starting to become much more religious and went to visit the rabbis in Buffalo on several occasions. I would generally go with a group of friends, and Gila would be with us as well. By this time, I was not doing very well in school. I was much more involved in other activities than in studying for the classes I was enrolled in. I continued to experience visual difficulties as always. My mother, sensing the respect that I had for my rabbis, urged me to go and speak to them about whether or not I should continue to study in university. Talk to the rabbi and see what advice he will give you. The difficulty with the visual impairment was mentioned. The rabbi asked me if there was anyone else in the family that suffered from this condition. I answered that there was no one in my family that suffered from this, but that it wouldn't be something genetic because I was adopted at birth. Hearing this, the rabbi sat up and asked if there was anything else on my mind. I spoke to the rabbi about the idea of marriage. He raised his eyebrows and gave me a He had noticed that a young lady was traveling with us to Buffalo. He gestured in her direction. With a nod of my head, it was affirmed that, yes, we were now talking about a marriage between Gila and myself. The rabbi told me that since I was an adopted child, and especially since I did not know what the religious status of my birth parents was, it would not be correct for me to marry her until I knew for sure that I was Jewish. I really had no idea about how to go about finding out if I was Jewish for sure. I asked the rabbi, who told me that it was not his job. He was neither a detective nor a lawyer. So I was on my own. Chapter 37, The Judge. Well, I got lucky. The Connecticut State Legislature had just passed an enactment which adjusted the old adoption law. In 1978, the law was changed to allow the adopted child some kind of information about his origins, as long as there was no positive identification involved. I traveled to Hartford, Connecticut, and sought an audience with the Honorable Judge of Probate. He denied me a meeting, or more accurately, he just totally ignored me. However, an Orthodox Jewish man who worked in the office noticed me there, and he asked me what it was that I wanted. I told him. He let me know that he was very friendly with His Honor and would talk to him. I met with the judge an hour later. His Honor was not very helpful or understanding. He had his own point of view on these matters. Nevertheless, I insisted that the information requested was now my legal right to access. He could not argue that point, for it was now the law. Sometime later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from the judge of the probate court in Hartford, Connecticut. It stated that I was of Anglo-Saxon ancestry and that I was not Jewish. When I read the letter to my rabbi, he exclaimed in joy that this was the best thing that could have happened to me. If I wanted, I could be a good Gentile. I could do all kinds of good deeds, although I could not do the good deeds called mitzvahs, which are the sole province of the Jewish people. If I wanted, I could convert to become Jewish. I told him to convert me. He informed me that at that point, that performing conversions was not his job. I would have to appeal to someone higher up the ladder if I wanted to convert. So I turned to the Beis Din, the Jewish rabbinical court that decides such matters. Chapter 38, the Dayan. My rabbi spoke with the rabbi of the rabbinical court in Toronto, Canada. He was a man well known and highly respected. After some time on the phone with him, they allowed me to talk to the rabbinical judge. Now he started asking me why on earth I would want to be a Jew, and kept on giving me the "you could be a good Gentile" business that I had heard from all the rabbis lately. He told me that I didn't have to be Jewish to visit the sick, to give charity to the poor, and even to pray. He asked me if I knew how to read Hebrew. I replied in the affirmative, and he told me that I could say all the blessings in the prayer book. To that I had a ready query. If I can say all the prayers in the Siddur, as the Jewish prayer book is called, then would the blessing "who has not made me a Gentile" be included also? He replied in the negative that no, that would not be permitted for obvious reasons. I told him that I had to fill in which I wore every weekday, and all the doors on my house that required a mezuzah had mezuzahs on them. I told him that I had people coming to my apartment on Shabbos, and that I made Kiddush for them. He told me that I was not allowed to make Kiddush at all, not even for myself. I was not allowed even to touch the wine. Upon hearing this, I countered, "But what if the wine is mevushal?" He was shocked, and I could hear it in his voice when he asked me, "You know about mevushal?" I told him I had good teachers. He told me I was not allowed to keep the Shabbos at all, and to make sure that I didn't, he told me to specifically break the Shabbos at least once on each Shabbos, since I was not Jewish. He told me that he was done talking to me. I wanted to know when I would be accepted by the court for conversion to Judaism. He told me to think about it and to call the next week. I kept pushing and said that I could call the next day if he wanted. I kept on calling each day for a week. He would always push me off, telling me to call back the next day. Finally, I told him, "Look, I'm serious. How long is this going to go on?" He told me to call him the next day, and perhaps we would talk about a meeting. I called him at home, as instructed, and was told that he was not there. He was at the yeshiva. Then I called the yeshiva, where I got the response that, "Oh no, he's not here. He's at home." I called his home and asked for the rabbi. For a long time, the line was quiet, and then a lady came on the line. I presumed that it was the rabbi's wife. So I told her, I would like to speak to the rabbi, please. And before you tell me that he's not there, let me remind you that it says in the Torah that you should keep yourself far from a false thing. The next thing I knew, I was talking to the rabbi who set up an appointment for the coming Sunday morning. I sat facing 3 gentlemen, the rabbinical judges. The head of the rabbinical court, or Beis Din, asked me again if I really wanted to become Jewish. I'm here. I came here to convert, was my reply. He persisted with that you could be a good Gentile business. Then he looked at me, and he looked at the other 2 judges, and he turned the full power of his gaze right back at me and asked simply, what do you want? Now I looked them all full in the eyes and stated deliberately, I want Taryag mitzvahs. I want 613 mitzvahs. Hearing this, the second judge seemed to almost jump out of his seat and turned to the head judge and said, give it to him. That's it. The head judge turned to me and said, okay, but remember, you asked for it. After the conversion, I returned to Rochester, New York. After another 3 months, Gila and I married. End of Book 1.